17,884,490 minutes since I was born. We're going to skip forward a few years, 196,980 minutes since President Trump was elected. When he was elected, it started to go around that people ought to consider updating their paperwork, changing passports or driver's licenses, legally getting married if they hadn't gotten around to doing that, legally adopting children if they hadn't gotten around to doing that, updating wills and surrogate healthcare decision-maker paperwork, all of those things that most of us don't think about a whole lot, and most of us assume that it can all happen whenever we get around to doing it. 186,612 minutes since I decided on my new name. Initially, I wasn't going to update my driver's license and my passport because it still had 2 or 3 years on it before it was going to need to be renewed. But since I was at a place where I was thinking about considering changing my name, I did some Googling and I found the name Casey. Casey is a name of Irish heritage, which means vigilant or watchful. And my last name is Sullivan, which is also a name of Irish heritage, which means dark-eyed or hawk-eyed. So I really enjoyed the symmetry and symbolism of vigilant, hawk-eyed. It has been 157,613 minutes since my new name was legal. 127,461 minutes since I notified my coworkers of my name change. That was a fascinating email to write because I had a eureka moment, one of those stumbling into the truths that you don't know for yourself until you say it to somebody else. I don't know if you've ever experienced them, but I was sitting there writing the email and I was saying, hey, I just wanted to let you know we're a little bit ahead of the new year, but as we go into the new year, I want to continue to learn and grow and be able to be boldly and authentically myself. And again, if you've never had one of those moments of like something comes out of your head that you didn't know and it smacks you in the face, that moment of saying, I want to be boldly and authentically myself was one of those moments for me. So then it has been 88,983 minutes since President Trump was inaugurated, and 77,465 minutes since President Trump issued an executive order defining sex as male or female. I don't know how much you all have paid attention to the news, but since that, the State Department has held any applications for new passports that have requested a gender marker change. They no longer allow a X marker, and they no longer allow you to change the gender that's listed or list a different sex than the sex you were assigned at birth. And they have actually started correcting applications when they do go through for people to match the sex assigned at birth. So that's a lot of minutes that we've been through in a very short time frame. But I thought of this, I think, song from Rent when one of my friends mentioned it. So Rent is a Broadway play based on a 1986, that is not a 1986 opera. That's a typo, I don't remember. 1886? We'll go with that. Opera La Bohème by Giacomo Puccini, Luigi Illica, and Giuseppe Giacosa, and it is about, Rent is about impoverished young artists who are struggling to live in the East Village during the thriving days of bohemian culture of Alphabet City, and while the country is experiencing the HIV and AIDS crisis. And while I was looking at it, there was a really great interaction quoted that I found that was recounted from the playwright's experience in a support group for people with HIV and AIDS. One of them said, "I'm not afraid of dying, but will I lose my dignity?" And there was a little bit of a back and forth with the playwright and another song in the play, "Forget Regret," in which the members of the support group said, "That's all fine and well, but HIV/AIDS will also make you angry and resentful as well." And between one of the members and the facilitator feeling the best, the facilitator asked how one of the members was feeling. He replied, "He's feeling the best he has felt in a year." And the facilitator said, "Then why choose fear?" And his response was, "I'm a New Yorker. Fear is my life." 525,600 minutes. What is the measure of a life? Is it measured in hate and anger and in fear? Or is it measured in love and joy and a fight for justice? We are in the church calendar in the season of Lent, which is a time of grief and mourning and darkness. We are in Lent in a season of grief and mourning and darkness of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And I think there's some pretty obvious ways in which in our current time we are in a time of grief and anger and fear and darkness. But I don't actually think Seasons of Love is a song about fear and grief and anger and darkness. And as much as some people like to argue that the Hebrew scriptures show a God of anger and darkness, I don't think the passage from Isaiah is about an experience of grief and anger and darkness. None of them, I think, ignore the experiences and the events that we're living through, but they all invite us to find a way of responding that is hopeful, that is oriented around joy and community and caring for one another. How do we find hope? Isaiah says, "Hear everyone who thirst, come to the waters. Listen so that you might live. My ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts." I think that's a verse that has been used in some negative ways in the past, but I think when you place it into the larger context of even just this passage in Isaiah, but the passages throughout our biblical tradition, it's clear that God's ways are ways of love and mercy and justice and value for each and every one of us. And that's what we're being called to in this passage, is loving and valuing and seeking justice, not only for those we know personally, but those who we might interact with on occasion, passing them in the street, and also those who we may never meet because they're on another side of the country or in a state that we will never go to. $525,600 minutes in a year. Maybe it sounds like a lot, maybe it sounds like not so much. It sounded like a lot until I went back and counted up the minutes to how long I've been alive. But we do have time. We don't all have the same time because we all have different things that we have to do in our lives and with our daily time. But we all have time to measure. And how are we going to measure it? With justice and mercy and love, or with fear and anger and hate? I hope you choose love. I hope we all choose love. And I hope we will have a measure of different experiences a year from now, 5 years from now, 100 years from now, that are not measures of fear and hate and anger. But it all starts with a minute. So choose love in this next minute. Amen.